Okay. 6 o'clock. I'll go ahead and call this regularly scheduled Carbon County School District 2 Board of Trustees meeting to order. First item is pledge allegiance. Aspen, will you lead us in the pledge? Special treat for coming.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, honey. Good job.
Okay.
I can say honey.
I know, but not very often.
No, that's okay. Okay. Item 2 for the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Item 3, presentations recognition. We just have a presentation.
Right. I'll introduce Matt Stone from Engineering Associates. As we discussed a little bit in past times, or previous times, the Elk Mountain building has some settling issues that have become apparent this year. We didn't really know what that was due to or how serious that was. So Matt Stone has gone out and done some studies, collected some data, and this is his report from that and what their recommendations are. I did attach this late today, the PDF to this item on your board docs, but he also has printed, and he's just going to go through this, answer any questions that you might have.
Almost transparent.
All right, thank you, Dr. Goodman. As I said, so we want to do a little study on the foundation system of Elk Mountain, really to see where it's at and gather some more information on some of the soils, the water in there underneath the structure, and really see what we can do to prevent any further damage to the building going forward through time. All right, so the study objectives, our plan is to determine the elevations of the structural components of the main school building itself. So that would include the footings and also the floor beams of the structure. And while we're doing that, we want to investigate any possible causes of that water infiltration into the crawl space and determine if hopefully it would be something easy and we could quickly identify what it is, find a quick solution, and that would solve it. But with that, we were able to develop an action plan for the remediation of the structure, the foundation system. So a little bit about the building itself. The main school building is approximately 138 feet by 66 feet wide. And the foundation system consists of strip footings along the perimeter of the structure and spread footings within the interior that support piers that support the floor beams of the building. And so some of the damage that was seen from the initial site visit with Dr. Copeland and the subsequent survey was some cracked drywall, cracked trim on the exterior where we could see some movement, then just first-hand accounts of the maintenance people having to adjust the doors and windows to get them to open and close properly through time. And those are all indicative of settlement issues and specifically differential settlement. If you think of a building, if it settles uniform, typically, depending on how much, it's not that big a deal. It's when it starts settling, one side starts settling more than the other is when you're going to start really seeing more issues with the structure, so you start seeing some damage. And when doing the visits, also notice that the soil in the crawl space is saturated. So right up to the ground surface is saturated. We collected a few samples and it's basically just water and mud is what it looks like in the little baggies and collected. So it's a lot of water in there. Some pump was installed there to help remove some of that excess water. So this is just a picture of the typical footing and pier system. They're 4x4, 4 feet by 4 feet, spread footings on the interior with a concrete pier supporting the floor beams, and those are shimmed up with some wooden wedges. There's plastic throughout the crawl space. Really not a good picture of the strip footing because it's covered in insulation. Not even want to tear it off to get a good picture for y'all. But it is really just a rectangular cross section with the wall supported on top of that. And so that's what that would look like underneath that insulation. And that surrounds the entire perimeter of the building. And so here's just some pictures of the damage that has been seen. Some cracking there and drywall on the interior rooms and damage to the exterior trim. And this was at the southern door. And once we get to some of the more details and data of the survey, does it make a lot more sense of why it cracked here? Because it makes sense on why it decided to crack where it did. So here's some pictures while I was down in the crawl space. This is some standing water in the south end. Probably easier to see in the report pictures. You can see some of the glare there. And walking on the plastic, so there was some water on top of the plastic covering the floor, the ground of the crawl space. But it's almost like walking on a waterbed. I don't know how many of y'all remember waterbeds. They're not too popular now, but it's kind of what it felt like still walking on a waterbed at times. So there's quite a bit of water, standing water in those locations. And this is the northern end with the sump pump as well. All right, so if you look at Appendix A, it's much easier to see on that. You can see some of the data that was obtained from the survey that we did. So we went to each foundation location, we went and surveyed and determined elevations. So along the perimeter here, in the northern and southern ends, we did the top of the footing, but the rest of them are at the bottom of the beam because we felt like that was the best gauge on that if the building was constructed and those beams were set and constructed level when it was initially built, we could see how much movement it's actually had through time. With the footings and the concrete, you can get a little different because the concrete could be a little thicker in some areas. So we use that as a gauge. But the main points, as you see along this edge right here, the numbers are higher than the ones on the western edge, which means that the building is kind of listing to that west side. And that's typically where more of the water was seen in these corners as well. So there is differential settlement, so the building is settling more on the west side. So for example, on the northeast corner, it's 97.15 to the top of footing and then 97.07. So it's about 0.08 feet, which is, for a little conversion down here, it's roughly an inch. So it's lower, 1 inch lower on that side, the west side, than it is the east side. And here at the southern door, you can see is 0.04 feet between the short little span right here. So it's about half an inch. And that's probably why that exterior trim is cracking at that location, because it was seeing a lot more movement right at that location. Something had to give, and the trim is what gave way, and we could see the damage. Right? Sorry. So when I was going through the crawl space, I wanted to check all the water lines, sewer lines, just to see if there was any possible sources of the leak from them. But everything was, all the joints were tight. There was no leakage from any of the water lines or sewer lines underneath in the crawl space area. So do not believe those were contributing to the water seen in, and specifically the water, standing water in the crawl space area. And so you see here the picture of where those little areas of standing water. And so the soil in here is saturated. It's moist all the way up to the very ground level. You can see standing, moisture there. But these are the areas where you can actually see water above the surface of the crawl space. All right, so looking at it, look at the topography of the site of the school building. It doesn't appear that it's any surface drainage issues. So if you have a rainstorm, rainwater, stormwater would come into the crawl space, and that's what's causing any of the issues. So we believe the source of the water is from a rise in the groundwater levels. And from the Terracon borings, from the geotechnical report, when it was initially in the facility before it was built, they showed it about 9 feet below the current surface elevation. Right now, we believe it's probably about 4 or 5 feet. So it's risen quite a bit. And it could be a seasonal thing as well. But we do believe it's purely from the groundwater rising through the soil upwards, and it's not a leak or anything like that contributing to it. So the action plan that we would recommend, the first things first, is getting the retaining services of a geotechnical engineer, because we need more soil data to really further the design for the drainage system that we want to do. And so the geotechnical engineers will provide more borings. So just simply, they could just do borings there at the corners of the building, and that would probably give us enough information that we need. I put some excerpts in the appendix B of the report, and there was only 2 borings that were done before the current building was constructed. And so we have very limited information to go off of right now at this moment. So we would definitely need more information to be able to fine tune the design and make sure that we don't have any further issues with settlement in the future. Next step would be to remove the standing water in the crawl space, because moisture in crawl spaces are just, it could cause health issues later on for the health of the building and health of occupants. So we'd like to really dry that out, get that a dry area. So we would recommend, based on more information from the geotechnical on the soils on the site, installing a fresh drain system to surround the perimeter of the building. And based on some of the elevations that we took outside the building when we were there, there's not enough elevation drop to let gravity do the work, so we'd have to feed it to a central location and then pump it out. It's easier if you can just let gravity do the work for you, but unfortunately we just don't have that option right now with the school, just based on the site topography. But so we're looking at having a permanent sump pump system installed. And so this is just a preliminary kind of idea of what this would look like. So the drainage, perforated French drain pipe would completely surround the perimeter of the building, and it would feed to a centralized location. Probably somewhere within the crawl space would be the best way to protect it from freezing. And then that would be pumped out and discharged to a location that we would determine at a later date when we figured we could just pump it out, let it drain naturally, or we could discharge it to some other area. And so the next step would be then to stabilize the foundation system and prevent any future movement. So if we have soil and we start taking water out of that soil, we can then start to see, as the water moves out of those void spaces, we can start to see more movement and more settling. And that's the last thing we want. So we'd have to really plan this and do it almost concurrently to get the water out and then shore up the structure as we go. But our initial thought here with the perimeter of the strip footings along the outside and the perimeter of the building is using helical piers or piles. And what these do is they transmit the load further down into soils that are stronger and have more bearing. As you can see here, we'll say this is for a residential structure, but they attach with these brackets to the exterior foundation system. And then it's almost like an auger, but you don't want to drill too fast because then it just brings the soil out. So it's almost like a screw. You kind of screw it into the soil. And these plates here at the bottom are which provide that bearing. And so essentially what would happen is the entire structure would be bearing on all of these piers. So we wouldn't be bearing on the soil directly underneath those strip footings anymore. Because we just don't know how much more movement those would have. And so this could alleviate some of those issues by taking it down to a better soil strata that's stronger and has more bearing and less chance for settlement. And for the interior footings, the spread footings, another goal of this is to really minimize the amount of things that we need to demo or tear out of the structure that's currently there to do the work and then have to go back and repair. So we want to really minimize the amount of disruption and damage to the existing structure if possible. So our thought here was be using polyurethane foam injections underneath all of the spread footings. And so what this would do is it would fill the voids of the soil underneath the spread footings. It would displace the water in there, and it would densify the soil. And when we densify the soil, we'll have better bearing capacity, so they have more strength to support the loads for all the interior spread footing locations. All right, so probably one of the things you all are most interested in here is the dollar figures associated with this. And so as we can see, you see it broken down by line item here. on what our estimate is for some of these costs. And we went out for quotes for line items 2 and 3, and they are fairly big dollar items, just because it's the amount of work. And these are, these two numbers are rather conservative as well, because we were not able to provide as much information to these companies to do a more fine-tuned design. So they were more covering their side and, making that cost more conservative. But in any event, this is our total is about $330,000 total to get the work. And so that's installing the drainage system, sump pump, having it hardwired into the building's electric system, and then shoring up the current foundation system with the helical tiles and the foam injections underneath all of the spread coats. And so with this, we also have some repair, that's to repair like the sidewalk and any landscaping they'll have to do to go and dig around to install things like the fence drain, get the helical piles installed. But it doesn't include any repair to any of the drywall or trim that's existing. So those are not included with this cost estimate. But so keep in mind that this number right here is very preliminary, based off of limited information, sole information specifically that we have. So it could go up or down. My hope is really that this is high, very high number. But time will tell based off of if we proceed to the next step, get more geotechnical information, and then we'll have a better idea. We can really get that cost more nailed down.
First question real quick is what kind of a time frame? Is that building gonna be okay this year for the kids to go to school?
Yes, with this, it's more cosmetic damage. It's not, it's very unlikely to be a complete collapse of the structure. It's just moving is all it's doing. And if the water moves out in the fall, which it may, you may see some more movement, or you may not. It's really hard to say right now, but it's not I don't foresee it being a danger in any of the occupants or anybody.
And then I live over there and that groundwater is unbearable. I mean, if you put your French drain in at 4 feet, that's a great big pump to drain the whole damn town.
Right.
Cause I mean, that's we're so shallow with the groundwater.
Right. That's one thing we would definitely have to consider in the final design of that. It's not impact have, we don't want to take water out and it cause everybody around us to have settlement issues. So we'd have to definitely have that fine and have a good design to prevent, just help our building, but not harm anybody else.
Right.
So that would definitely be part of our, the design for sure. Yeah, the last thing we want is to cause any other issues. For anybody else.
No, exactly.
So.
Just a couple of comments, and you certainly can still ask Matt questions. So in talking with Sally and just looking at these numbers and all, which was a little higher than we first were talking about, and it could be lower. I mean, we don't know till we actually bid it out and get more information to those companies. I asked him about timeline also. Is it better to do it in warm months or fall or whatever? And it doesn't sound like it makes a whole lot of difference, except the dead of winter would be hard.
Right.
To do anything. So a little bit depends on the timeline of the bidding process and the decision making and so on as far as moving forward. But in major maintenance right now, our budget or our balance is about 1.6. We're going to get an additional major maintenance allotment this year, which would take that to 2.4 million. Partly because we haven't had major things go wrong, and so we built that up, and partly just trying to be careful and build it up for unforeseen things, pretty much like this, really. The only big ticket items that's come out of major maintenance really recently, once we get past those security vestibule expenses we've done over the last several years, has been boiler replacement, I think, at Saratoga Elementary. So the money's there, and just wanted you to know that piece of it, because that is a factor. The building, according to Sally, as best she can remember, was around 2 to 4.
1.7.
1.7 million when it was placed there, and that was 2007, which is also the date of these borings that he was talking about. So they're pretty old as far as the boring data, probably changed by now. But that's the cost of the initial building, and obviously it's one of our assets of the district. So just wanted to make those comments as we move forward. I told Matt that we may want to have questions and then put this on the August agenda to actually move forward with it. After at least we've had time to kind of absorb some things. I mean, my recommendation is I don't think we should have an asset that if we have the money to repair it, why would we, move forward and repair that building as opposed to not. But it is one of our bigger kind of major maintenance expenses we have had in the last recent years.
So I guess one of your first recommendations was to get a geotechnical engineer to get more boreholes.
Yes.
So that
And we can move forward with
before
that.
that anyways, right?
The rest of it, we would need to bid.
And that, the geotech is included in that, just ballpark, I would say probably 3,000 to 5,000 would be for the geotech.
Right.
So,
How is this going to, because we're gonna have to do some work over there before school starts on that playground, maybe we get that. ADA.
That's being scheduled now. I've already talked with him about that because I was trying to remember looking at that building where the sidewalks came all the way up to the building and where they didn't, because it's a little bit different. But Matt seemed to think that they could, work around that, because that's
without
something.
damaging too much.
Yeah, so we don't have to build the playground twice.
Exactly. We try to do our best to minimize that, or if there's another solution, then we'll, we hate for you to spend so much money and then have to tear it out.
Yeah.
So we could look at other solutions for that as well.
On all the other sides, the sidewalks, other than the ones going into the doors, don't go up all the way to the building. So it would only affect those pieces that go into the doors. But on the playground side, I think we think it does go all the way to the building.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. But it really wouldn't affect the playground. That French drain would not go out, that far.
Right.
I think you have to remove that concrete though, so you get
Yes.
pressure in there. And that's where that ramp, that handicap ramp is gonna be, is right on that same area.
Well, the playground will have it's called a hard surface. It's that spongy material that's at SES and at HES playgrounds. But, so there won't be a need for a ramp per se, because that will come right up to the outside of the sidewalk. But it's possible they could actually, I don't know that they'd have to remove the entire width of the sidewalk.
I wouldn't
don't
think so.
know.
No, going down, I would imagine 4 to 5 feet from the current surface elevation. So their trench wouldn't need to be that wide. It's not like they really have to do that much work. They could put all the fittings on the pipe and then put it in the ground. So it's not like they really have to work in there. So the trench wouldn't have to be, really excessively wide for people to actually get in there and work. And it may be where we won't have to dig on that side. We may be able to do something else, to accomplish our goal and not disturb that side, because that would be a lot of rework, extra money that would be, doesn't want to be spent. I understand that, so.
So, I mean, I guess my initial recommendation, based on what I've heard and any input you might have, is to maybe move forward with the geotechnical part of it, to get that going, to save time, and then maybe come back in August and vote to put out bids for whatever comes from that study then.
Right.
And then that might change a few recommendations or not, we'll see.
Right. So, from that, we can hopefully get much more detailed. But hopefully this number goes down and we have a lot more confidence in it once we get that information.
Does it make sense to do geotechnical in the next month, or is it better just to make a decision at the next meeting and move forward with it at that time?
It's really on your own timeline. Because we'll need time because based on their availability, they may not be available for a month. It's still a busy time, so something. We need time to go through the report, go through some more design, work with some of the contacts we have for the piles and injections, see what the recommendations would be then, and get a better cost estimate. So,
Cassie brings up a good point. If they go ahead and do their geotech report now, this is the lowest that water is gonna be all year, the groundwater. The river right now is almost dry. I don't know do we need to do some in the spring and see where it's at its highest?
well, that's something that we can put together. Dr. Copeland, I can further discuss it in more detail as we go through it. One thing I wanted to do from the get-go too is just put some case borings in there and monitor that groundwater.
Monitor what
Come
is-
back every couple of weeks, see where it's at, see how it's
That
moving.
makes sense.
And because that would help us later too, for the drainage aspect. And so we wouldn't have a full year's worth of data at that point, but we could see it as it moves in at least, a half a year maybe, or a quarter of a year.
Because that groundwater over there is unbelievable.
So when is it the highest, Paul?
In the spring of the year. Right now, the Bow River is completely, you can almost walk across it without your ankles.
I mean, I'm kind of surprised that the water table goes up at all. I mean, we
Yeah.
haven't had that much rain. It's not
Well,
like.
it's irrigation. You
Right.
get the whole river valley,
Yeah.
like my house underneath, when you're irrigating, then there's water.
Oh, I see what you're
Now,
saying.
they stopped irrigating
Yeah.
through, August would be the lowest, and then
And those
the
cranes.
whole floodplain just gets irrigated, all these metals
Exactly.
around that. And those gravels just get full of water.
Yeah, and that's all it is gravel. It's-
Exactly, and that's that layer. We think the water's, it can move very quickly through it,
Mhm.
but we can move the water out quickly as well. But so that's another thing with that geotech report is, you look again, appendix B, you can see how it changes in the depth to it and the thickness of that layer. And so we'd like to see, on that far southeast corner, does it just disappear? It possibly could disappear, or it could get thicker again. And so that's kind of where we need to know.
Those are pretty different to be that close.
Exactly, and that's what makes it kind of difficult right now to have a good design on, because we just don't know too much about it. And we think boring two is the best representation of what's under the building, but we just don't know, especially like I said, how quickly it changed in probably
Yeah,
20 feet.
difference in the sand, just not very far.
Right, so that's really why we need to get that. And to continue with that point, their borings as they do, I would like to go ahead and put casings in there, at least some of them, just see what that groundwater does, or.
It would be interesting also to see how you get rid of that water out of that French drain.
Right,
You
yeah,
know, because there's, unless you put it in some kind of a cistern or something, or you're just
Right,
recycling that
yeah,
water
exactly.
over and over again.
exactly. We've had some thoughts on that. It'd be, if we could get approval from the town, can we discharge it to the sewer? I would.
You'd probably overrun our sewer. There's a
Exactly,
river.
so,
There's a slough right there that's within 100 feet of where you're at. So
Right.
You might have enough fall to run it through the slough
and if we could get there, take it on down.
and get it away from
Right.
there. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, because we do a full site survey too, and kind of really see what's the best period to do it, what's our best option, for sure.
Would have been cheaper to keep the old school. There's my little barn on
Water under the bridge.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Hey, if you have any other further questions, the office number's there, or you can reach out to Dr. Copeland, we can provide some more contact information. Any other questions, think of anything tonight? So, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, item 4, correspondence behind this time. 5 resignations and hirings, no resignations, but we do have a hiring.
We have a hiring, we're recommending Hannah Good for the counselor position at Hannah Elementary School for the upcoming 21-22 school year, pending certification.
Chairman, I move that we offer the contract to Hannah Good for the 2021-2022 school year pending certification. Current assignment will be HES MBEM counselor.
Second.
Moving and seconded to offer a contract to Hannah Good for the 2021-22 school year, pending certification as a counselor in Northern Elementaries. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Administrative reports, we just have Dr. Copeland this time.
Yep, just one. Just wanted to give a quick update on the facilities, Elm Mountain, basically, we've already talked about that. We listened to the study, the playground resurfacing will take place in the next coming weeks. So that's the update there. Hannah Track, I was up there last week in person. I will go up there probably either tomorrow or Friday and take a look. I did look at the CAM that I shared, that website information for whatever. They're making pretty fast progress. The only hiccup may be getting the sod down in time for practice to start. There'll be close to 4 weeks. That's assuming everything goes to schedule with getting it down this week, which was what their original timeline was. So we'll see. If not, we're talking still about some contingency plans. There's just not a lot of green area. If you know of any, let me know. We look around. I've talked to Charlie. Medicine Bow's not really great because they've got some gopher issues, and I don't know how much green is actually over there right now. That's the town likes that now. We've discussed, high school starts a week before junior high practice. So it's possible we could use the football field down here behind Saratoga as a temporary thing. Try to come up with a little bit of early outs and let the high school team, that they would have a whole week on that. That's not, has to be coordinated. Would not have to be coordinated because junior high would not start till the following week. So we are talking contingencies and
What about the old softball fields?
where are they?
Behind the rec center.
I went over there and drove. Have you been over there? Lucky?
Yeah, it's been years. Last time I was there, it looks like they got a million dumpsters stuck.
There's no dumpsters, but there's also no green.
There's no green. No. I didn't see any green over there because I went over there to look. Somebody else had suggested that. That it used to.
Oh, they're soft ones.
It looks really nice facilities. So that's the update on Hannah Track. The high school gyms, I believe all of those are complete. I think Saratoga's still waiting to actually get on them, and maybe in Cameron and HEM just had refinishing years. This was the year Saratoga was sanded down and actually repainted. And so they look great. All of them look great. I went to Saratoga's just because it has new graphics and stuff on them. To see what all that looked like, and it's going to look really nice. They also have that new lighting in Saratoga like the others now, where you just flip it on and off. It's LED. It's really nice. So our gyms are in pretty good shape now, so that'll be a good deal. Item 2 on there is the Summer Law and Leadership Conference. That's August 5th and 6th. You can sign up for that on the WSBA site. I will probably go for Thursday, but probably won't stay overnight until Friday. Friday morning's kind of a fun thing. So that mock trial for some of you that have been before, and they have kind of the act out possible law situations and court cases, and it's people from various school districts that kind of act out that and just as a training. But it is that Thursday, and then it ends up on noon on the 6th. If you need a room or anything, be sure and let Dana know just as soon as possible if you want to go and spend the night there for that. So that's the update on that. The other thing is, of course, the fall roundup. Those dates are not tentative anymore, so ours will be August 24th in Laramie. We'll get out. I think those started either 5 or 6, depending on whether you want to go and eat beforehand or not. But I'll get that information out to you for sure. I didn't see a time on the latest email there, but that's coming up for those of you who'd like to go to that. I'll plan to go to that. That's in Laramie. That will be at Laramie High School. And then item 3 is just kind of a informational thing because it's a board regulation, doesn't need a vote. But in hiring the new elementary counselor, we found that some years ago, most of you I think were on the board, so you remember this, probably maybe Nick wouldn't, but a few years ago, because we decided we would make the counseling, any new counselors hired term contracts like principals, like 1 year at a time. There's no continuing status earned unless you move a teacher that already has continuing status into that position. We do have still a couple of teachers, a couple of counselors that are in that status. But our newer counselors we're hiring, we came up that year because we hired one that year that's a term contract person. So we came up with a counselor pay schedule. We kind of figured out in hiring Hannah, we kind of caught it that the elementary counselors work less days than the high school counselors because they don't do scheduling and some of the things that high school secondary counselors need to do. So I just added wording on that bottom that the elementary counselors would be paid, off the teacher scale, but they would not be continuing status. So I just wanted to have something in there about elementary counselors if we hire elementary counselors. So that's the revision there, just references that. And that's my report.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Item 7, audience. Do we have any public comment? If you want to say anything, go ahead and introduce yourself and take a few minutes. And
Do my best.
happy to have you.
My name is Bob Edwards, and I know many of you. I've taught many, some of your children and some of you, actually. And you guys have done a great job of continuing on the great education that I think that kids get. We had 3 children go through this, and they're all doing exceptionally well. So I don't have any problem with it, but you have come against some difficult times over the last year or so. And in my opinion, this is the only thing that has brought me to make a comment to you, and that's critical race theory. I understand you had a workshop yesterday.
It will happen in September, I'm sorry.
Oh, well, anyway, hopefully at that workshop, you will get some more information that I'm going to give you about critical race theory. I wrote a letter to the chairman of the board. Evidently, he shared it with the superintendent, and the superintendent responded to me with an email, which was fine, and most of what he said was certainly something that I would agree with. But I'm here today to ask the board to block the teaching of critical race theory to all students in Carbon County School District number 2. And furthermore, prohibit the use of and purchase of media, textbooks, and any other educational materials that promote critical race theory. That's the bottom line. I know I'm not supposed to take up very much time, so I'll get right to it. Critical race theory is very broad. It is a dangerous thing, not only for individuals, but for our country. I'm not going to talk about any of that. What I want to talk about is how it will affect our students, and in particular, my grandchildren and some of your children and grandchildren. That's the most important thing here, is how are we going to address this situation? It's critical. The first thing that critical race theory does is it divides people into 2 groups, white and non-white. Depending upon your skin color only. That is all the determination is. Looking at an individual and noticing that they're white or non-white determines their character. That's what it is. And first and secondly, what's going to happen is that when they divide that, then there is no judgment as far as your character or your personality or your thought processes. You are determined to be in that group. You're in the white group, you're definitely racist, and you're putting down all non-white people. If you're in the non-white group, then you are oppressed and you are hopeless because you have allowed yourself to be oppressed. I don't want my grandson, who's in the 1st grade next year, coming home and saying, I can't be friends with Johnny anymore because my skin is white and his isn't. That's terrible. Not only that, based on the skin color, they're teaching hate. Not only are you supposed to hate the other group, whites hate the non-whites and non-whites hate the whites, but you're supposed to hate yourself. That goes against everything that I ever taught. in Carbon County School District number 2 for 38 years, that every individual has the opportunity to succeed and become the best that they can be in all areas. This says you are to hate yourself because you are white, and you, by being white, by being born white, have oppressed all non-white people. And the Black or non-white people are to hate themselves because they are so lowly on the pole, and they have allowed themselves to be victims by the oppressive other group. There's only 2 groups, white and non-white. It's all based on skin color. And as a scientist, I'm sorry, I hate the expression follow the science, because we haven't been doing that. As a scientist and a science teacher, there is absolutely no genetic connection between skin color and the character that a person has, or their possibility of achievement and success. There is no such thing. But being born white, your grandchildren, if they are born and you are white and their parents are white, they are automatically racist and oppressive to non-whites, according to critical self theory. And so it's as you can tell, I'm a little bit excited, I guess you might say, or by this, but if you're going to hate oneself, that goes against everything that every teacher that I have ever known in Carbon County School District number 2 would go against. And so if you don't believe me and you want some information, get on the internet. Go to Penn State University. There is a professor there who, in a lecture hall, I don't know if any of you have seen it, but he is in a lecture hall with a couple hundred or more students. He picks out a white person, a white young man, and a Black young man, and he recorded this. He proceeds to rail against them both and humiliate them both because of their skin color. That's the kind of teaching that critical race teaching will do. As you may have heard, the American Federation of Teachers, I am so thankful that I got to teach in Wyoming, where you do not have to be a member of a union. But the American Federation of Teachers president came out in support of us teaching critical race theory in our classrooms. That's the second largest teacher union. And if you watch the news, you know the things that teacher unions do. They are, in my opinion, not for the benefit of students. And so if you think that our textbooks and our education material are going not to have this in it, you're mistaken. Textbooks and all other educational materials are controlled by those large districts that spend a lot of money. And so the publishers are going to put, even if it's subliminal, critical race theory in there. And so in a little bit of a conclusion, I want to repeat what I would ask you to do. To block the teaching of critical race theory to all students in Carbon County School District number 2. And furthermore, to prohibit the use of and the purchase of any media, textbooks, or educational materials that promote critical race theory. And I'll leave you with 2 things. Look around the room at all of us. If you support critical race theory, you You are all racist. Every single one of you, and including me, because we are white. I don't want my grandchildren to be told that, or even that indicated, or any other student that we've ever had. And in my opinion, if you don't formally come out against critical race theory, then you're supporting it. Then you are saying that everybody that you see here in this room is a racist and an oppressor. And I know we are not. I don't know many of you, but I know Nanette and I know Sally, and they are not. But I don't know the rest of you all that well. But according to critical race theory, you would be put in that group. Who cares what you've done? Thank you, I'm sorry.
Okay. Appreciate your coming, your interest. As you mentioned, that it is a topic for our September work session, whether or not we do anything about it, who knows? There's lots of outside forces that want to force political agendas both ways. So, you know, we'll have a discussion about it. It's something that's out there in the country and we're aware that it is. Thank you for coming. And I'm sure you're not the only one in the district that has kids that has the same concerns. So sometimes you just need to have a voice that comes and talks for other people as well. Okay, we don't have any unfinished business at this time, nor do we have any new business at this time. This is kind of unusual. This is a bare bones agenda here. 10 consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 11, financial information, treasurer's report.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the board, your general fund balance at the end of June 30th on 2021, this is your cash carryover, is $3,357,917.22. You see there your revenue for the month of June, your reimbursed expenses, your June bills, and your June payroll. In section 2, you see your major receipts. Of course, June was a big month for Carbon County Treasurer to send us tax money, and we receive retirement reimbursement from the state. And section 3 is your various investments at their various rates. We don't have any CDs or anything that's maturing right now. The interest rates are below 0.1. So we've got most of our money invested in Wildstar at 0.1874. Does anyone have any questions regarding your general fund?
Just a quick question there about, so is the end of June, is that when our cash carryover limit is?
Yes.
And what is our limit?
The limit is 3.7 something.
Okay.
The 3.357, you have to add the collections for June that come in July. And so at the end of June, you don't know what that is, but I will tell you that our June collections that came in July were over $300,000, about 330, I think.
Last year.
Yeah, this year.
This year.
This
So
year.
it'll put us right close.
Yeah, it was back real close to the cash carryover limit. And as we get into the budget, I'll kind of explain some of that to you. You'll see in your bills list, I can do it now. You'll see in your bills list for the end of June bills, we did transfer $300,000 to depreciation reserve. I did that as a cautionary measure to be sure that we stayed far enough under that cash carryover limit. And I'm glad I did, because I was anticipating 140 to 170 in tax revenues to come from June, and we actually got 330. So.
And just, so if you transfer the depreciation reserve this year, for some reason we needed it next year, you just wouldn't have to make a check.
Correct. Right. And that's kind of when you do your budget, you budget so much to go to depreciation reserve, but that doesn't mean it has to happen. And, you know, and this year our budget was 150,000, but when we amended the lunch fund budget and we didn't need as much lunch fund transfers, it was in the area of the budget that I could move that transfer from lunch fund into depreciation reserve. And so that allowed the $300,000 transfer to depreciation. Kind of how budget works. That way it's still in the same line. Any other questions on your general fund? Okay, on page number 2, your other funds. You see there at the top, the grant funds and so forth, their balances at the end of June, which is normal. We haven't spent any of the SR2 money yet. We're working on that. We've spent all of the year, all of the Federal CARES Act money to pay for your CBBE, the virtual education teachers. We spent all of that grant plus a little bit of the year 2020 grant toward your virtual education during COVID, when we had students doing virtual education. We still have a little bit of money left in there. Otherwise, you see all of your grants, and I know that they're working now. We haven't gotten approval yet for the 2022 consolidated grants and so forth, but we're very close.
We did actually get it
Okay.
last week. I'm sorry.
Last week or last week, yes. You see there your comparison between June of 2020 and June of 2021 payroll. I will let you know that the difference there is your bonuses or your stipends that you paid in June. And that's the difference in those two payrolls. That's why June last year was a little bit higher. You see your scholarships. There are no new scholarships issued during the month of June. Your employee benefit fund is dwindling. We have one employee that's still receiving benefits from that. I think he has another year and a half to go to receive benefits from that fund. Your major maintenance fund, as Dr. Copeland stated earlier, we ended the year at 1.6 million. Our revenue will be about 800,000, a little over 800,000 for this year. The capital construction fund, that's been the balance there for about 3 years now. Your depreciation reserve fund, as I said, I did transfer that 300,000 in there, but we did spend some money on servers and equipment this year, so that 198,000 we did spend out of depreciation reserve and not out of general fund. Your lunch fund, as I said, our transfers were less because of the revenue from the summer food program. We offered free meals all year during the school year, and that boosted our revenue because it boosted the participation because all the meals are free. And the reimbursement was higher for the summer food program meals. So food service is doing very well. Then you see your encampment activity fund, your Hannah activity fund, your Saratoga activity fund, and of course the Medbo lodging account is closed. Any questions regarding your other funds? Any questions regarding the summaries of your revenue and expenditures? Our revenue was down a little bit, which is typical, and our expenditures were also down a little bit, so that's a good thing. Not by much, by about 1.5%. So that's good. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Sally.
You're
Bill?
Mr. Chair, I move that we pay the following bills, and this will be, Charlie and I will Sally, and she answered all our questions. Anyway, this will be a little bit longer, but in the general fund for June 16th through the 30th, 528,892.47. In July regular, 85,11736. The federal fund, nothing for June until July, 13,982.63. Major maintenance fund in June, 27,981.26, nothing in July. Hot lunch fund in June, 15,592.21. In July, 7,355.5. Encampment activity account in July, 1,652.61. The HEMHS activity account in July, 761.90. And Saratoga Schools activity account, 5,505.36. The subtotal in June, 575,465.94. In July, 114,375.11. For a grand total of 689,841.05.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the bills in the grand total of $689,841.05. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, August bills committee will be Miller, Sewell, and Wamsley. Okay, items from the board. We don't have any board governance review this month. Area B, policy. JEA, we do have a revision. Second. Very. Date changes.
Yeah, JEA, the compulsory attendance, there was just one of the policies we forgot to put that new state change about the incoming age for kindergartners. And they moved back that date from September 15th to August 1st. So
No,
we
I
just,
click on it now, it doesn't go to
I
the-
know, and I have to apologize, because I thought I was fixing it, but I fixed the wrong policy, or the wrong addition.
that's wrong.
I didn't fix the draft, I fixed the actual policy. So I apologize, I can certainly,
It just sort of says September 15th, that was crossed out.
That was crossed
instead of August 1st, is that?
yes, that's
That's
correct.
what changed.
And I can,
It was on there this morning.
it was.
I think she corrected the spelling.
I corrected the
She
spelling.
corrected the spelling on the old version.
Sorry about that. So we will be approving the one with the August
Correct.
1st change.
That was the only change that, so
Yes.
August 1st.
Yes.
I move that we approve the change.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the change on policy JEA. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed. Motion carries.
And then that GCB A-RD, which is a regulation, you can see that statement. I kind of summarized it, but at the bottom in the exhibit, it just said, no, if an elementary counselor is hired, the counselor will be placed on a teacher pay schedule of 170 days, no continuing status. So just to clarify that.
Okay. All right. No Region 5 board report, because the board is not here anyways. Board member comments. Nathan, you want to start this time?
I'd like to just thank our presenter, Mr. Stone. Comments too.
We have county fair coming up in a week, so if you want to see some of the Franklin County School District kids showing their animals or have stuff in the exhibit buildings, come over there to Rollins.
And that starts a week
August.
for this coming weekend or something like that.
Yeah, let me pull
That's okay.
it up. It starts August 1st, so it's a Sunday, Monday. I think Sunday's the ranch rodeo. And it's a horse show and stuff. And livestock shows and stuff start on Tuesday.
Echo everything with, especially what Nick said with Mr. Edwards, is that right?
Yes.
That's pretty courageous to come in here and talk about stuff like that in front of a room, much appreciated. Mr. Stone as well on our sinking school in Elk Mountain.
Could you take care of it?
Just go over there and just throw a little sack and everything will be all right. And hope everybody's having a good summer.
I'd also like to thank Sally. Always appreciate her knowledge and her patience. And Bill's committed, so I really appreciate that. And Bill, he's quiet over there. I don't know what we're doing.
This one, I am Bill Luck. First, Mr. Edwards coming in, that was very previous and a very important thing that we need to look at. The summer hopefully doesn't go by too fast.
Agreed. I don't have anything else.
Looking forward to fair and give some of those other kids that do other activities kind of a chance to shine. Sales kids in like last year was insane how high it was.
Okay. You know, everything everybody else has said, yes, this Mr. Edwards said, this is a very important subject that we need to look at and address one way or the other. I'm not gonna lay my hand down yet. But also, I'm actually looking forward to this next school year because we will be meeting at the schools again. And I've always enjoyed being able to visit the schools and spend the days there. Just enjoy the kids, and that's the big thing. In fact, I probably shared, there was an incident that took place up in Hannah. And this little girl talked to me for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then she started to walk away, and after the first few steps, she turned around and looked back at me, and she said, "You know, mister, that was a very good conversation, thank you." And then proceeded to walk away. And that made my day. So, anyway, thank you.
No executive session is needed this time. The next board meeting will be Monday, August 16th. Here at the central office building. I will not be here, I don't think, on vacation. And then, as previously noted, in September, we will start going back to the schools meetings, and they will be at 4 o'clock in order to facilitate having staff available at the staff meetings. I mean, the board meetings. All right, so like a motion to go into recess, the regularly scheduled board meeting to hold a public hearing on this budget.
So moved.
Seconded, so we go recess the regular meeting and go into a special budget hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Item 17 would be a public hearing regarding the budget.
Mr. Chairman, your budget was published to your board agenda a couple of different times. I'm sorry, I forgot the headings on the pages. I don't know what happened to my program, but Dr. Copeland brought that to my attention this morning, so I republished it, and then I also found a mistake in depreciation reserve, and I republished it again. So it's out there. I didn't know if anybody had any questions or comments regarding the budget. Let me go through it now or wait until action item.
Wait for the action.
Okay.
Question.
Any public comment?
Okay, we adjourn this public hearing and reconvene the regular meeting. Okay, item 18 would be the 2021-2022 budget approval process. So first, item A would be the rec board. Attached budget there. Comment on.
Do you want me to need a motion or?
Yes.
Just do it by the total, approve the budget and the total. Okay.
Chairman, I move that we approve the rec board budget of $293,858 for the 2021-2022 school year.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the rec board budget in the grand total of $293,858. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B would be the BOCES.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the CCSD #2 BOCES board budget for the fiscal year 2021-2022 in the amount of $333,452.35.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the BOCES budget, a grand total of $333,452.35. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay. C is the Hardin County School District 2 main operating budget.
Mr. Chairman, the proposed general fund budget for 21-22 is $17,900,000. That's a decrease of $400,000 from last year's budget. The major revenue sources come from your property taxes and the state foundation guarantee, plus your cash carryovers we previously discussed, or your general fund balance at the end of June 2021. Our assessed valuation is up by $16 million compared to last year, so we're expecting more tax revenue from the assessed valuation. We're very fortunate in Carbon 2 that we do have an increase in our assessed valuation. We're in good shape as far as our general fund balance. Our carryover has decreased a little bit in anticipation of our June tax collections, which we already discussed, that we got 300,000 instead of 170,000. The average daily membership is very close to the same as it was last year for the model funding. It just varies by 0.23. In ADM, we're not on a 3-year rolling average anymore, we're on actual. That's how close we are to our 3-year rolling average, because we're a little bit higher on our actual than we are with a 3-year rolling average, but we're working under that for this next year. I did just get the funding model, the actual final form of the funding model yesterday. So most of these numbers are preliminary, I have a preliminary model to work with, and so this is what you've got. If you go to page number 3, you have your general fund budget, showing the revenues that we're expecting from our local district sources, which is your tax revenue, your county sources, which is your 6 mil, your state sources, which is your foundation guarantee, and then your reserve amount, or your carryover fund balance. Then it shows in the expenditures how it's divided amongst your instruction, your instructional support, your general support. We don't put anything towards both facilities because we have major maintenance to take care of things there. If you had decided to, what were we looking at, $100,000 we were going to spend?
The track.
The track. If we were going to spend money there, that's where that budget would have gone to. I forgot, it's been so long. And then our operating transfers are your transfers to food service, to Title I, to supplement Title I, and your transfer to general depreciation reserve. We have some little transfers that go to activity funds that we reimburse them for their activity fees that the kids pay. We give that back to their activity funds so that they can use that to spend on what they need to. And then we give them $2,400 a piece per high school for the year that help fund the year book publishing. And that. And then you have your cash reserve non-budgeted amount, which is about a little less than 50,000 less than it was last year. And so the amount of the $400,000 cut is kind of spread amongst all of those areas. There's not any one area that's taking a big hit. So that's your general fund. Your grants fund is increased significantly because of the 1.2 million that we're anticipating from the ESSER 3 money, or the from the federal funds coming in. Whether that will come to fruition, we don't know, but it's there, it's budgeted, so if we do get it, it's already budgeted there. The general fund supplement to grants, again, is your Title I supplement, and then anything that goes over the grant amount that we have to spend. The Title I is the major supplement that we receive there. And then that's, your expenditures are divided amongst your instruction, instructional support, general support, community support, etc. Any questions on the grants funds? Okay. Major maintenance, Dr. Copeland has already mentioned that our budget for major maintenance is $2.48 million. We will receive $811,000 for our major maintenance that we received that from the state. Any questions there? In capital construction, it's showing 185,000 coming from the state. We do have some security money that's out there. It's about 90,000 something. And the remainder of that is just kind of a placeholder in case we do have a project that has to come from the state. But we do have some, like about $94,000 under secured capital construction that we can tie into. We don't have a project out there right now for it, but it's available. Your employee benefit fund, again, we have one person still being paid out of that. It should get close to $5,000 when we've got everything paid out. And we'll just have a little bit of a carryover money when that happens. Page number 8 is your depreciation reserve. If you didn't get the new version, the actual fiscal year 2021 was incorrect. I forgot to move my years. So you do show in 1920, the transfer from general fund to be 939,000. Last year it was 300,000, like we talked about before, from the general fund. And then it shows how much we spent that way. So we're anticipating 150,000 coming from general fund for 2021-22. And then there's our balance, $1.6 million in the depreciation reserve. We talked a little bit in Bill's committee about needing to purchase some buses. That's where we'll purchase buses from, is out of that depreciation reserve. If we need to buy another school car, we can get it out of there. If we need to buy servers, we can buy them out of there. If we need to do some minor replacement like a plasma cutter, we shouldn't have to do any more plasma cutters, but if we have to replace the plasma cutter, it can come out of depreciation reserve. That purpose of that is for repair and replace equipment, and we could repair buildings if we needed to from depreciation reserve. The next, page number 9 is your food service. We see that there is more federal reimbursement money. We did actually receive 432,000 last year. Normally that would come in about 160,000. So that's the difference between what we normally get and what we got last year because we were on the summer food program. So, and your lunch sales and other charges are down. You should get over $100,000 there, but it's low because everybody's on free lunches. So the only thing they're paying for is alcohol. Okay. And then of course, we're going to spend all the money we get for food service to balance the budget. Okay, page number 10. Any questions so far? You guys stop me. The trust funds or scholarships. We haven't had any new scholarships. We did have some makeup interest back last year, but now we're earning about $13 a year on the scholarships. And there weren't any expenses because we didn't issue any scholarships. The pupil activity funds, these are your Hannah, Sartoga, and Encampment activity funds, your H clubs, your E clubs, your S clubs, and all of the STUCO and all of that funds. There, you should see your actual revenue from your student groups, then you see their expenditures, and then the anticipated revenue and expenditures for next year. Any questions there? The debt service fund, we don't have a debt service fund, we don't have any debt. We're a big school district, we don't have any bonded debt. Well, there's nothing there. On page 13 is a statement of bonded indebtedness. It's a requirement that we have that in our budget, but we don't have any bonded debt. On page 14 is your legal limit of debt margin. We could go into debt for $19 million if you wanted to pass a bond issue and do that. You can do 10% of your assessed valuation as bonded debt. So if you want to build a new school in Walcott for $19 million, you could do that.
Do you have figures on that, Sally? Cost?
Yeah, that's probably what it would cost to get all the high schools.
It would be more than that, to probably do a high school. I think Larry, of course, it's a little fancy, but their high school is above 40 million.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea of how much things cost now.
Yeah, well, number of prices the way they are. Page 15 is your proposed levy. And Dr. Copeland will sign off on this for you as the superintendent of the school district. There are 25 mil proposed levy. We have your BOCES half mil, which is going 0.4 to the school carbon 2 BOCES and 0.1 to region 5 BOCES. And that's where we put that in there. If that's what you want to do, is send 0.1 to region 5. This is the place that happens. Okay. And so that, and then you give a 1 mil to the recreation board. So that's where they get their revenue for their budgets, the rec board and the CCSD 2 BOCES and region 5 get their money from these middle levies that the school board sets. So in the proposed levy, it shows that we're going to raise $5 million for the general fund and out of the 26.5 levies. Okay, page number 16 is your resolution that you will need to pass the total appropriation of $26,885,795.35. The other page that you have with your budget is the one that compares last year to this year. Kind of gives you where the money is increasing and decreasing, and nobody took a really big hit. We just kind of moved money around and everybody took a little bit off. We got rid of tutors completely. We aren't going to hire any tutors. We're going to use ESSER money to do that with the instructional facilitator person. And, you know, it's all there. Do you have any questions on how those percentages worked out or what the comparison is? I'm hoarse, I'm done talking. Mr. Sherman, that is your budget.
Okay, somebody will need to read the whole page, sort of the whereas.
I mean, I was supposed to be pretty sorry. Joe, go ahead.
Joe's staring at me. I think I've read this before. But
I read the one for both.
You go down, I'll step in. and help you.
you're going to. So I sound really smart. Okay. Whereas on the 21st day of July, 2021, the budget officer filed with the Board of Trustees of Carbon County School District Number 2 a tentative budget and budget message for the fiscal year ending in June 20th, 2022, and whereas a summary of such budget was entered into the board minutes and notice of the public hearing on such budget together with said summary was published in the Circular Sun and the Daily Times, a newspaper having general circulation in the county in which the district is located on or before the 14th day of June 2021, or notice was posted in 3 conspicuous places in the district. And whereas a public hearing was held concerning such budget on the 3rd Wednesday in July, at which time all interested parties were given an opportunity to be heard. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of Carbon County School District Number 2 that such budget as revised, if applicable, is hereby adopted and subject to further amendment, is in effect for the fiscal year ending in June 30th, 2022. Be it further resolved that the following appropriations are made as of and for the fiscal year ending in June 30, 2022, and those respective expenditures applicable to each department and fund shall be limited to the amounts hereby appropriated, subject to future amendment. Appropriations, general fund, 17,900,000. Grants, 2,600,000. Major maintenance fund, 2,480,000. Capital construction fund, 200,000. Depreciation reserve fund, 1,830,000. Employee benefit fund, $17,730. Food service fund, $650,000. Trust fund, $15,755. People activity fund, $565,000. Recreation board, $293,858. And the CCSD number 2 BOCES board, $333,452.35 for a total appropriations of $26,885,795.35. Be it further resolved that after deducting all available cash and estimated revenues, the following amounts must be raised through general taxation, and that such levies are required to provide such amounts are hereby authorized as of and for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. Amounts to be raised: general fund, $4,802,038.08. Recreation levy, $192,081.52. Board of Cooperative Educational Services, $96,040.76. Dated this day, this 21st day of July, 2021. I need a second.
Moved and seconded to approve the budget, and total appropriation of $26,885,795.35.
How much?
$26,885,795.35.
budget at that time. We didn't say budget. You're welcome.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, everybody has to sign this. I'll start with Joe. Pass it around this way before we leave. Okay, this meeting is adjourned.